today we're going to be looking at the constitutional monarchy of England. I'm basically going to explain to you how England became the country it is today, how Queen Elizabeth has absolutely no power. There's ceremonial leaders in England that is actually the Prime Minister and Parliament that holds that power. It's going to be a series of events that take place that makes the monarchy a constitutional monarchy instead of an absolute monarchy. A constitutional monarchy is much more fair to the people because they actually have a voice in the government. And they have that voice through Parliament. And Parliament is just like our Congress. It's elected individuals, and they are the law-making body of the government. So Congress is our legislative body. It's made up of two houses. Parliament is very similar to that. And it's elected, there's more than one person that runs Parliament versus with the king, it's only one person that's in charge, so they rule how they want to. Now, in the beginning, England was an absolute monarchy with the Tudors. And we already talked about Henry VIII and his issues with his wives and how he was upset with many of them because they did not give him a son, and he wanted to divorce his first wife, which is going to cause him to break away from the Roman Catholic Church and turn England into a Protestant nation. In 1485 to 1603 is how long the Tudors are going to hold the crown in England. They worked very well with Parliament. He's going to have three kids. He's going to have Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth. All of them will become leaders of England. However, Edward and Mary is going to be very short. Queen Elizabeth is going to be in charge for a long period of time. Now, we already talked about Mary, Bloody Mary, when she became queen. She wanted to return England back to the Roman Catholic Church, so she killed a lot of Protestants that did not want to convert. However, Queen Elizabeth was a Protestant, so she returned England back to the Church of England, which is Protestant. She did die without having any kids, so the throne is going to go to her cousin, the Stuarts. So the Stuarts, the first of their line is going to be King James. He is going to be in charge from 1566 to 1625. He is going to be the first king to rule over three countries, which forms the United Kingdom: England, Scotland, and Ireland. He did persecute a lot of Puritans during his time in office, which is going to cause a lot of them to come over to the New World, hence the United States and the Plymouth Colony and Mayflower Compact. We talked about that last week. The Puritans wanted to purify the church. They didn't feel like it was strong enough Protestants in the Church of England, so they wanted to leave and form their own churches, and that's what they did. They came to the New World. One particular area is Massachusetts, the Plymouth Colony. However, King James, he was a Christian. Under his rule, he did ask for scholars to get together and get all the different types of books of the Bible and combine them in one big book. And this is where you get the King James Version of the Bible today. He did not write it. He ordered for a book to be written with the combined books of the Bible. So that's why it's called the King James Version, because it was written under his time in office. Now, while he was in office, Catholics are still going to try to take back control of the country. They will not give up. So they're going to plot, the Catholics are, they're going to plot to blow up King James and Parliament. The plot failed, leading to a crackdown on Catholics. So then they became very not lenient towards Catholics. They wanted them out their country because of this plot. The person that was in charge of this plot, Guy Fawkes, from 1570 to 1606, this is how long he lived, he was a former soldier, and he was assigned to carry out the treason. He, of course, like I said, it failed, so when they caught him, they did torture him into confession, and he was hung for the crime. But before they could actually hang him, he went ahead and jumped off the plank himself and hung himself as a sacrifice, I guess, or he just knew that he was about to die. Now, so at this point, the Protestants are still in control. The Catholics are not going to win. It is called treason because they're going against their government. Anytime you go against your government, it's considered treason. That is one of the laws in our Constitution that says if you commit treason, you should be put to death. After James I, King Charles is going to come into office, and he's going to reign between 1600 to 1649. Now, he is going to try to be an absolute monarch. He violated the Magna Carta and imprisoned his political enemies without a trial. This is a big no-no. Now, the Magna Carta was passed during the 1200s, so as you see, 400 years prior to him becoming king. But it was a very important document. The nobles basically got together, and they wrote this document called the Magna Carta, and they made the king sign it. There was a king, he was abusing his power, he was putting people in jail without even having a trial by jury, he wasn't letting them be judged by their peers, he was basically being a tyrant, an absolute monarchy, similar to a dictator. So they wrote this document called the Magna Carta. That is going to be the first document that's going to put a limit on the king's power in England, and that started in the 1200s, excuse me. So this king, King Charles, 400 years later, is going to violate the Magna Carta. Of course, that's not going to make people in Parliament happy. So in 1628, England was in debt, and he had to convene Parliament to ask for a tax increase. Because at this time, he knows that he's not making Parliament happy, so he doesn't even hold sessions with Parliament. They don't even meet. He typically is ruling as a king by himself without even meeting with Parliament and consulting them on the decisions that he makes. He's just not even acknowledging that they exist. But he needs to pass higher taxes because England's in debt. So what he does is he does convene a session with Parliament. He tells them, look, I'm not going to dissolve y'all anymore. I'll let y'all stay in session. Just pass this higher tax rate for me because we're in debt and we need the citizens to pay more taxes. So Parliament took action and demanded that Charles agree to not imprison anyone without cause, and you needed to have a trial. King Charles is going to dissolve Parliament for another 11 years. For 11 years, Parliament did not meet. After taxes were raised, after he got what he wanted from Parliament, he went ahead and dissolved them again. So that is 11 years. Of course, Parliament is upset. So Parliament is going to respond because he is going to have to call them back into session because there's going to be rebellions that break out in Scotland and Ireland. So he is going to have to call them back in session after 11 years. So when they get called back into session, Parliament makes some moves. They move to arrest and execute Charles' top advisors and declare the king had no power to dissolve Parliament. And then Parliament decided to raise its own army, which is going to lead into the English Civil Wars. From 1642 to 1649, people of England were fighting against each other. That's why it's called a Civil War. You don't have another country coming in. It's people within that country are fighting each other for power. The two sides are going to be the Cavaliers, they're for the king, versus the Roundheads, they are for Parliament. The Roundheads are going to be successful because they're going to be led by Oliver Cromwell. He led the Roundheads, and he was also a Puritan. King Charles was captured by the Roundheads. He refused a constitutional monarchy. He was tried, convicted, and beheaded in 1649. If he would have signed those documents and said that he would have been a constitutional monarchy king, he would have still been alive. So there's going to be an end of monarchy, and it's going to lead to the Commonwealth of England. That's what it's going to be called. Oliver Cromwell was named Lord Protector. Cromwell, however, became a tyrant. Tyrant is very similar to a dictator, losing the support of the people. Remember, we already talked about power and how absolute power can also turn a person to being a bad leader because they have so much power. Nobody's checking their power. And he had no checks and balances on his power. So in 1658, Cromwell died and England returned to a monarchy. Well, how did they do that? They invited Charles II to the English throne. Now keep in mind, he is the son of King Charles the first. This is the son that father was beheaded. And so they're going to his son and saying, hey, we know we beheaded your father, but we would like a king to return back to the throne. He agrees, although he knows that his father was beheaded by the Parliament. So from 1630 to 1685, he will be king. He was a Catholic sympathizer, so that meant that he allowed Catholics to probably exist in his country and practice their beliefs. He left no heir, so the throne went to his brother James. We're still with the Stuart line. King James ruled from 1633 to 1701. The problem with King James is he is a Catholic. And remember, England is Protestant. of the Church of England. That is not going to make people happy in England because they're Protestants. He promoted divine right of rights of kings. So again, he's trying to return England back to an absolute monarchy. Keep in mind, down his family line, somebody has already been beheaded because they tried this before. You would think that James II would have learned his lesson. Fearing the return of Catholicism, and that should be a C, that's a typo, Parliament negotiated with King James II, oldest daughter Mary, to replace James II. So King James, although he was a Catholic, his oldest daughter Mary was a Protestant. So they went behind his back, talked to his daughter, and said, look, we'll let you be queen. Get rid of your father, as long as you rule as a Protestant. So what does she do? Her and her husband, they become king and queen of England. So Mary is going to replace James II. In 1688, James II is going to learn a lesson from his ancestor. And he just left the throne. He didn't fight because he was fearing execution. He feared they might behead him. So he did leave his throne peacefully. It was no war, and this is considered the Glorious Revolution because it was no bloodshed. When you think of revolution, you're thinking of a lot of bloodshed, you're thinking of a lot of death. This didn't take place. It was a peaceful transfer of power. So William and Mary are forced to sign the English Bill of Rights. So Parliament did make them sign something, and it's called the English Bill of Rights. And this is going to forever cause England to be a constitutional monarchy. The English Bill of Rights is going to, it granted trial by jury, right to bear arms, that means right to own a gun, no cruel and unusual punishment, so no torture. They need to have a clean death, meaning it wasn't a mess. Example, torturing, cutting somebody's toes off very slowly. That is cruel and unusual punishment. And they have a writ of habeas corpus. That means they need to be told of their crime. A king cannot just arrest a person, throw them in prison, and tell them they're guilty without letting them know what they're guilty of. And they need to let that person be able to defend themselves. This is all in the English Bill of Rights. And I could just name what some of the stuff I didn't put on here. The Parliament is superior to the king. So Parliament is letting William and Mary know, hey, we are superior to you. You are just a constitutional monarchy. Parliament must be allowed to meet regularly. House of Commons controls the Treasury, which is taxes, and that's part of Parliament. The king cannot dismiss or interfere with Parliament. King cannot suspend laws. The king cannot be Catholic. They put that in the English Bill of Rights. The king cannot suspend laws. The king cannot maintain a standing army. The king cannot quarter soldiers in people's private homes, meaning he can't send soldiers to like your neighborhood and make that neighborhood let those soldiers stay in their home. Like they came to my house and say, hey, we want to live in your house. They can't do that because of the English Bill of Rights. This document, the United States is actually going to look at. Other countries are actually going to look at the English Bill of Rights because it is going to have a huge influence on our government, on how we shape the rights of the people. And the Magna Carta is all going to be found in areas of our Constitution. And that is it for today's lesson. Please study for your quiz on Friday. Please look at the video on the Absolute Monarch, study that sheet, and then study this video. I'm also going to put an attachment of a PowerPoint up so y'all can look at that too for this video in case I went too fast. Thank you.